Good afternoon. Welcome to the Community Living Education Project's Sharing Possibilities for Community Connections and Learning event. The Community Living Education Project, also known as CLEP, is a program through the Rutgers School of Public Health. CLEP is committed to providing individual guidance, mentoring, and education surrounding community living resources for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. The CLEP team can serve as a bridge for advocates and families whose loved ones are ready to explore residential options outside of the family's home. We are happy you are joining us for session number 5 of the Bite-Size Lunch Series, Making Assistive Technology Work for You. Today's topic, incorporating assistive technology into the classroom, is being presented by Mike Murata and Naomi Leibowitz, representing the Richard West Assistive Technology Advocacy Center at Disability Rights, New Jersey. To assure the highest sound quality possible, all attendees will be muted during today's event. We like to keep things interactive, so to ask a question to the presenter or host, please use your Q&A option on your screen. If you would like to be unmuted to ask your question live, just send us a quick message using the chat feature and we will make sure to unmute your microphone during your turn. Topic-specific questions will be addressed as long as time allows. And for consideration to all of our attendees, we encourage you to keep your questions as general as possible. At this time, I would like to welcome today's presenters, Mike and Naomi. Mike and Naomi, welcome.
Thanks, Melanie. Appreciate it. As you all can see on the screen, possibly, Naomi and I are both logged in as the same account. So now you're seeing my name twice with 2 different pictures attached to it, which is fantastic to me. I think that's really funny. But it's good to see all of you. We're excited to be here with you for another episode. I'm going to call it an episode of this series. This has been a lot of fun to present as we go forward. Naomi will be in the chat answering questions as we go. As Melanie said, don't feel shy about adding your questions in the question panel. If you have the chat panel to drop things into, which I think you should, you'll be all set. We'll go through some of our information. We'll leave some time for conversation. We'll leave some time for tangents, I would imagine, which is okay. That's kind of the whole point of this, is that we have some information and then we'll leave some time for just conversation. I think that's a much better way to do this at times, especially in a topic as wide as this. And in reality, all of our AT topics have been kind of wide. I mean, when we think about just that idea of incorporate AT into classroom settings, I mean, we could talk conservatively for 3 days about this, but instead we'll hit some big points and then we'll see where the conversation takes us, and we'll share a bunch of resources with you. Sometimes that feels like a better way to attack something like this. So we'll move through, we'll give you a sense of what we're going to look at, and as we've said, there's plenty of opportunities for you to chat with us. Melanie is our host. We thank her for having us. There's all of the information for Melanie and her whole team. As we've said, this is one in a series. There have been several we've already done, and we have a few more to do after this. So it's kind of exciting to hit on these different topics of AT. We will make the slides available to you. So of course, there's the slides, there's the link, and Naomi can drop it in the chat. Melanie dropped it in the chat before. It will take you to the slides so you can see them. There are links in the slides. There are pictures that take you out to web pages, those kinds of things. So having the slides might be helpful as you go forward. You can either use the link that's on the slide there, or you could take your mobile device out and scan that code on the bottom left corner, and it will also take you to the slides. So you'll have access to all of that information. We are recording today, and once the recording has been processed, Melanie will share that with you as well. So you'll have access to that to be able to listen to all of these little pearls of wisdom one more time. And by those, I mean the ones that you all share. I don't know if I have a pearl. I have nuggets of information to share. I feel like you all have pearls. As Melanie said, we want to hear from you as we go, so please feel free. If you'd like to turn on your mic, just let Melanie know in the chat and she will activate your mic for you. And then if you want to use the chat or the Q&A, we will look at both of them. Naomi is our Q&A master and our chat master, so if you want to put something in there, she will be watching both of those as I just chat away. So we'll be happy to interact with you that way. As we said, as Melanie said, and as we'll tell you right now, we are from the Richard West Assistive Technology Advocacy Center. I'm the director. Naomi is our assistive tech specialist. We provide support across New Jersey. Through our organization is hosted within Disability Rights New Jersey. In case you're curious where we are, there's the link to all of our socials, which are some form of ATAC NJ, something in there. Some of them have DRNJ in them, but there's all of the ways you can reach out to us. Really, I don't want to spend too much time talking about us. Well, actually, I do. I mean, why not? No, but I want to give you some information. The piece that I would like to point you to is our website. Our website is at4nj.org. Everything we do is there. We do a lot of stuff. Predominantly, our three main activities that we do through our center, the focuses of what we do is really designed to ensure that residents of New Jersey are provided information to understand what assistive technology is, how to get it, what might be the best thing for them. So ultimately, that's what our services help with. And so we have this ability to provide demonstrations. So a demonstration would be if you think you had a need. So maybe you're struggling with something, you or someone you're working with, a family member, whoever it might be. You're struggling to perform some task. You could reach out and talk with one of us, either myself or Naomi or one of our partners in the community, and we would be able to show you technology tools that might help you and help you make the decision of what might be best for you. In addition to this idea of showing you options, we also host a lending center, which will let you borrow that equipment for 3 weeks at a time to try it out. Everything looks great the first day. It's like the 5th or 6th day that we really want to see if a tool is the right one for you, because by that time, your honeymoon period's over and it's like, all right, now maybe that is not really doing what I thought it would do. And that takes a couple of days. So you can borrow things so you don't have to buy them and then realize they don't work. You can try it out first. And then finally, we support Goodwill Home Medical, which is down in Camden County, with their device reuse program, which allows them to collect equipment from the community, durable medical equipment, wheelchairs, walkers, canes, bath chairs, those kinds of things. They take that equipment in, they refurbish it, they clean it, sterilize it, repair it if they need to, and then they put it back into the community for a significantly reduced rate. And I mean significantly. It is much, much cheaper than it would be to purchase new. So a really great opportunity to take a lot of that equipment out of our basements and garages and closets and attics, wherever it might be, and get it back in the community so people can use it. So that's the three big services we do. And we do a lot of other things. We do things like this. We do a lot of webinars and a lot of training and support to highlight to people what is out there for assistive technology. One of our big things, we're so excited, this is back. We host a yearly conference, an annual conference on assistive technology. And we are back in person in September. Oh, wait, we're in September now, at the end of this month. I just realized today is September 1st. So on the 22nd, we're going to be live in person for our day-long AT Summit, which will happen in Mercer County at the Mercer Community College, which is in West Windsor. And Naomi just put the link in the chat. The link will take you to the conference website, which will also have a link there for you to get your free ticket. This is a free event. We're finalizing some of the sessions now, and we hope to have those listed on our website, hopefully after the holiday weekend, probably on Tuesday, as Naomi puts in the chat. It's free, free, free. I don't know if you heard, but it's free. So please consider coming, share it with people in your networks, because the more the merrier. We'd love to have people there to learn from each other and share their experiences. So that is our AT Summit. We're very excited. Like I said, this is part of a series. We do have a handful left. Look, they just keep coming. So we do these once a month. The link to register is there on the slide, and I'm sure I can put it in the chat for you. Hold on. Here comes the link in the chat to sign up for them. So there you go. And so you see we're going to do our October session on supports for individuals who are blind or visually impaired. Our November session, supports for individuals who are deaf or hard of hearing. Then we'll do our December session on AT supports to assist with medication and helping you keep on track and be independent for that. And then finally, our January session on mobility. So that'll be really exciting. So those are our sessions as they come up. We'll dive a little bit into this one. Like we said, our plan is to go for about 45 minutes-ish. If this is your first time here, this is kind of our plan. Our thought is to get you about 15 minutes worth of information, give or take. And then we can jump into questions, comments. Hopefully we can show you some things that might work for you. We also have some scenarios at the back end that we can ask you your opinions on of what you might do. And so there's a lot of great information that we'll go through as we continue to look here. So we'll start here with this idea of what is assistive technology in the context of education, because that's what we're talking about now. And so when we think about AT, there are actually two parts to this discussion. And for most people, one part seems relatively straightforward. That's the device part. Where we think of the actual things, the technology tools themselves. And we've given you the definition here. It's an AT device is anything, any item, piece of equipment, or product system, whether you acquire it commercially off the shelf, modify it, or customize it, that you use to increase, maintain, or improve the functional capabilities of a child with a disability. That definition says a bunch. But you can boil it down to AT can be anything. Anything that helps a person be successful, improves their functional capabilities. And so I think that's a really strong piece of information to have, that device part. To me, the part that feels even more important that people don't always think about is the other side of this AT coin in education, which is the service piece. AT service is any service that directly assists the child in the selection, acquisition, and use of the technology device. Service is a lot of times where things start to get missed. Training, support, troubleshooting, repair, replacement, those kinds of things, those are service pieces. So just getting stuff, and by stuff, I mean those technology tools. By just getting stuff, you are doing a great job. You have not done your job, though. If you were looking at this as a percentage of complete, getting the device, in my mind, is about 40% of the way there. And that other 60% is the service part that makes sure the device is used effectively for that person, for the task that you thought it would help them with. And so these two things need to work together in order for that person to be successful with that tool. The other piece that comes up when we think about AT in education is this idea of consideration. It is written right into IDEA, consideration of special factors. The IEP team shall consider whether the child requires assistive technology devices and services. That sounds awesome. And then the picture underneath is a meme of someone calculating in their head all of these numbers, and the writing in front of it says, me wondering what consideration means. And I think that is really tricky for people. If you've seen an IEP, you know it's written on there. Has AT been considered for this child? Yes or no? Our answer, well, we know because it's the law. The answer has to be yes. But more importantly than the answer, it's how did you get to that answer? And that's really interesting when you talk with teams about what does consideration mean to them. And for a lot of people, that's met with a bit of a kind of stare off into space, kind of like the person in the picture there. Is this idea of, well, I don't know. We've talked about it. Is that consideration? Sure. That's definitely talking about is definitely consideration. Talking about it, brainstorming, identifying needs, identifying possible solutions, looking at that together, bringing the individual in, bringing in the members of their team and to figure this out. sometimes people will say in an IEP meeting, well, we're considering it right now. And I would argue that, well, shouldn't you be considering it all the time? And isn't your IEP meeting the culmination of your consideration? I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there. I like to stir that pot a bit and get people thinking a little deeper about it, because we're considering things all the time. If Naomi and I visit a school and talk to a team and they ask us questions about technology for an individual's needs, and we provide some discussion about tools or a demonstration on tools, isn't that part of the consideration? It is. Does it get documented so that we can review it later? That becomes a key piece also. I liken this to that metaphor. If a tree falls in the woods and no one hears it, did it make a sound? If we do consideration all year long and no one writes it down, did we do consideration? I don't know. It has to be documented some way. It has to be brought to the team. Everyone has to be part of that conversation. This is much deeper than simply checking a box. I was in an IEP meeting, and so it's so interesting when these things actually happen. And a parent who, they had a bit of a rough relationship, the parent and the school. In fact, the parent had sued the school previously for 2 of their other children. So this was their 3rd child through the district. And so everybody was a bit on edge, as you can imagine, in this meeting. And when the case manager started the meeting and said to the parent, would you like to say anything before we start? Do you have anything you want to put out there to the group before we get going? And the mom said, yes, I do, actually. She said, I've been looking at this. I have these IEPs from all of my children. And I've always looked at this and never quite known the answer. She said, it says right on here, you have considered AT for my child. What does that mean? And there were a lot of blank stares around that table and a lot of people, and we've all done it in a meeting. When you don't want to be called on, what do? You get incredibly busy in front of you, looking down at your paper, and you're writing a lot of notes all of a sudden. And the team had a hard time explaining to her what that meant. And so I think that's really important, that we have a good understanding of what that means for when someone does ask how that happens. What does it look like? How did you get to the answer you got to for my child or for this student? And that's where consideration comes in. When we think about myths of AT, there's a lot of myths, and a lot of them around AT in education. The idea that AT is only for students with disabilities. Well, no, AT can be for everyone. By its definition, AT is individualized to a specific person's needs. That doesn't mean that any of us might not need something that we would consider AT. I'm wearing glasses right now. That is my AT. That is something I need. Having glasses does not mean I am cheating, by the way, either. That's our other myth. AT is cheating and offers some kind of unfair advantage. I would argue my glasses are helping me participate in any way in this discussion right now. It's because now I can see things. The idea that AT replaces good teaching, that is also not the case. This idea of AT is a support, like a pad and a pencil is a support, and a Chromebook in a classroom. These are supports. They don't replace good teaching. They are tools we use to assist someone to be an active, independent learner. And then finally, AT makes students unmotivated. I would say it's just the opposite. A good match of technology makes someone incredibly motivated to do something because now they're able to. And so thinking about that, and we have this really nice quote at the bottom, if a student can't learn the way we teach, we need to teach the way they learn. And thinking about flexibility in our educational spaces as we go forward. This one's very text heavy, sorry about that, but just thinking about this idea of how could we foster inclusion in a classroom using technology. And think about all of these examples and these little quotes that are here about inclusion and how this supports people, eliminating barriers, focusing on ways to have people engage with the content, ultimately leveling the playing field for our learners as they go forward. And it's interesting, we tried to connect these two together a little bit. If you weren't with us last month for our event, we did accessible educational materials, which also fits nicely into this conversation about AT in schools, this complementary ideas of, we're talking today about the AT piece, but the materials we use in school must be accessible also, so that that student can be successful. And so I linked the slides into the picture here on the slide. And then when the video is up and available, I'll link that back into the slide as well, so that you can have that resource. But some of these things, when we think about technology, the idea of technology is very broad. And sometimes it's so broad, people don't know where to start to kind of bring the focus back to what it is they need. And so when we think about where is a good place to start, what should I be looking at? Our first thing we always say to people is, well, what do you have already? What do you have, and are you using it effectively? If a school reaches out and says, we're in a situation where every student gets a Chromebook, great. Are you looking at the supports that are built into your Chromebook already to give some AT support to someone? And a lot of times people will say, no, what does that mean? And that gives us a path. One of those myths that we hear a lot about AT is it's expensive and complicated. No, a lot of times it is just the thing you have, and using it creatively, and thinking about a way to ensure that people have flexibility to customize their experience. Oh, I see happen in the chat. I just saw it off the side of my eye here, having a conversation of someone said they used an AlphaSmart. Richard used an AlphaSmart in school, and then someone said, what is an AlphaSmart? Sandy, you are missing a huge fun thing. An AlphaSmart was the precursor of our laptop computers in the classroom. And AlphaSmart was a portable word processor, which did not have internet access. It did not run programs. It was a word processor. You typed on it. It lets you type up to, I think, like 100 and something pages of text, and then you would connect it to a computer to download that text into a computer. So it was that idea of providing someone individualized support before we had laptops for everyone. And what it gave you is its ability to input your ideas into some device that then could be printed out and shared with the teachers. And Richard says, would that be considered cheating? And I would say, definitely not. Naomi said no quickly, and I agree. That would not be cheating. That is another strategy. If I struggle to write, physically write, for whatever reason, perhaps I don't have a good grip, so I can't pick a pen up. I don't have the clear penmanship. I can't stay in the lines. Any number of these physical issues that might come up that have me struggle with the act of writing. Well, perhaps typing is a solution for me. And now we see with technology in our classrooms and so embedded into our learning environments, the idea of typing in a classroom is just an understood now. But when we go back to the time of an AlphaSmart, that for some people, that was very radical. This idea of, no, I'm not going to be writing on a piece of paper. I'm going to be typing somewhere and then sending it to you so that you could print it for me. This idea of using the tools that are out there, really interesting. If you do a quick Google search and check that out, Sandy, check that out. If you do a Google search for AlphaSmart, you will find them. In fact, if you go to eBay, you will find people selling their AlphaSmarts. And Naomi said we have them in closets. In fact, I just found 3 in my basement when I was cleaning out my basement that still work with the same set of batteries that were in them, and they've been down there for quite some time. So using those tools, just as powerful today as they were before. So think about what you have. Look at what's built into your tools. We had one example listed on the slide called Immersive Reader, and I want to show you a demo of what that looks like. I flipped over to another page, which is just an article I was reading about EdTech in the classroom. And Immersive Reader is a product developed by Microsoft that they've built into their Microsoft tools to provide support to learners. And let me show you what that looks like. Here I have just a basic web page open with some standard text, but maybe I need this text modified and customized for me to use it and to interact with it. So I'm going to highlight some text, and then I'll show you the features of Immersive Reader. I'm going to click on a button here that says, help me read this. And what it's going to do, the immersive reader tool, is take that text that I had highlighted and modify it for me. And so now what you're seeing is text that has been changed. Where it was a traditional block of text before, now that block of text has been spread out. You'll notice there's white space in between the lines. This text can be read aloud to me now.
Let's take a trip back to high school. Do you remember what participation felt like?
Okay, so that was text being read aloud to me. You can have any of this adjustment. Here's size adjustments. I can change the spacing of text on the page to help somebody, give them more white space to allow them some support to focus on the text on the page. I can change the themes and change the colors. I mean, I'm just clicking buttons and just changing the colors now. That might work for someone and be better suited to their visual needs as they move through text. Some of the other things you can do with Immersive Reader is you can highlight the syllables in a word. So if someone is working on the skill of learning to read, and they need words broken down to syllables as they listen to them.
Did you have to raise your hand to answer
And now
questions?
they see words broken.
Were you
down
loud
into
or quiet
syllables.
or somewhere in between?
Sorry, I kept talking. I wanted it to stop. Sorry. So I can do that. Let me turn that off for a second. Also, I can get some support if I need to provide support to a learner about the parts of speech. Look, what are all the nouns in this passage? Well, now I can click them and click this button and they all turn purple. What are the verbs? Now they're all red. So I can provide some support as a person is moving through text to help them be supported in addition to the audio support as they go forward. And then finally, I can adjust so that there is a focus on the text. What I did was I just clicked the dictionary. Let me get rid of, I have all these boxes in the way, sorry. There you go. So now I have the line focus so I can see just the line that's being read. I can turn that off. I can show the picture dictionary. So any page here is school, and there's some pictures, and then I can hear that word.
School.
So there's some support for that. And then finally, which I always think is really powerful, the Immersive Reader has a translation feature built into it. Let me change it to Spanish, only because I know Spanish has a voice. And so this saying, oh, it will translate to Spanish for you by word. Well, maybe I want this whole passage converted to Spanish. I click a button, and now I have the entire passage in Spanish. Here's my original, and here's my translation in Spanish with.
Hagamos un viaje de regreso a la escuela secundaria.
And now I have the ability to hear that in Spanish as well. And so that is all part of the Immersive Reader tool. Now I'm showing it to you on a website. If you have Microsoft tools, this is part of what's built into them. And so when we talk about this idea of using what you have, if you have Microsoft Word, that's built into it. You have all of that support. It is free and available to you. So think about the things you have. We're not going to go through all of them because I want to get to your conversations. And I see people are talking in the chat, which is awesome. But thinking about this idea, Immersive Reader, another tool that's very powerful to create and share digital materials is called Book Creator. And we gave you the link to that, so you can go visit that. There's a lot of these resources that you can go out and check out. Thinking about how you might model language in your classroom using communication boards to assist individuals with sharing what they want to share in a space. If they're nonverbal, if they're unable to use the vocabulary that you need to in order to conduct that activity or participate in that activity. Before we move to this, I'm gonna warn you, and I told Melanie before we started, and I knew it would happen. I'm getting my lawn aerated today, and don't you know, they have to come in this 45 minutes, and they are here now. So you might hear some rumbling outside my office. I apologize for that, because here he comes. I see him going right past the window now. But let's talk a little bit about things that you might have as ideas or questions. We have a couple of these scenarios. If you want to add some information in the chat and think about how you might help this individual. So we'll give you some scenarios. So we have the first one, Sam. Sam is a bright student who can read, but when it comes to reading out loud, he often stutters and feels self-conscious. What are some solutions we can put in place to help Sam with reading out loud? What do we think as you think about some of these examples? Do you have an idea? The beauty of some of these ideas is that they can be low-tech, high-tech, mid-tech. It doesn't matter. We could use a computer, but are there other strategies we could use? When I think about an individual who is perhaps self-conscious about sharing, and during a read aloud, yeah, Darlene says, maybe a device that can read it to the class. Yeah, even if we're using something like that immersive reader that I just showed you, Sam could type into it and then simply hit the button and it would read it aloud to him and everyone else out loud. Perhaps Sam would feel comfortable recording that on his own outside of class, recording it into a recorder or something like that, and the audio, and then just play the audio. And I think that could be an option. One thing I might suggest to this teacher as we think about this is the reading out loud critical to this educational activity? Is that important? And the answer can be yes, that's fine. I never go into a classroom and tell a teacher they're doing something wrong. I simply ask questions that get them to think about it. What value is that bringing to the learning experience? And I think that becomes really important. And someone said visual supports. I see that on the side there. Darlene, thank you. Paul mentions to Kristen that iPhones have sound recognition under accessibility, so you could do some of that as well. You could look at that in your phones, but there's some simple, straightforward things that we could do. Our computers that we have, every computer has the ability to read out loud. And so if we put text into it, we could simply have that read aloud. And so that could be enough of a solution for him. Why not only offer that up to Sam, our person in this scenario, why not, as an experience in the classroom, offer that to anyone? And then we have this idea that it's not just Sam who doesn't want to speak out loud or is unable to because of some issues that pop up with him. What if we just say, if a read aloud is required, everyone has an opportunity to use any tool they want to read this text out loud. And Raj says reading aloud to himself, looking at a mirror to become more confident and feel less self-conscious about his reading. Maybe it's the ability to read this information beforehand and know that it's coming and be prepared to read that out loud. I think those are great ideas. I think a lot of those tools were not complex. It was not complicated. These were just ideas, brainstorming. What we're all doing right now is considering assistive technology. We're talking about it. We're coming up with ideas, brainstorming. Richard says, or read 1 page a day. Start getting familiar with that information. These are great examples of consideration. Here's our issue. Here's some solutions. What might work best for Sam? I think a key piece of this in all of this conversation for Sam and any other person we talk about is, what does Sam think about all of this? Too often, technology solutions happen to people as opposed to them being active participants. And I don't know about you, but when something happens to me and I wasn't asked my opinion, I'm not bought in a lot of times to that solution. I want to be part of that discussion, and we need to afford that same thing to everyone we work with, that same courtesy of be part of the solution. Maybe he has an idea, and maybe he's identified that to others and people haven't listened. And I'm not saying everybody has that happen to them, but I have been in situations where that's happened, where the student has the answer, yet no one's listening to the student. And then it takes a specialist to come in. It takes an expert. Oh, I'm going to air quote that for sure. It takes an expert to come in and say, you know what we should do? We should do exactly what Sam has been telling us we should do, because that's a great idea. Let's try that. So thinking about, and Melanie points out, keeping that technology solution person-centered. we are here right now for Sam, not for the things that I think are best. Doesn't matter what I think is best. It matters what Sam thinks is best. And I think we need to remember that in that working with teams and working together to try to solve some solutions. Solve some problems with solutions. There you go. Maybe that's a better sentence. Sorry. Yeah, Richard. So Richard points out he tends to read a page a day, but sometimes forgets. And so maybe there's a strategy that we can look at to support something like that, where Richard has those experiences of, is there a way to have that reread another day? Perhaps does Richard, as he reads it, read it aloud and record himself and then listen back to it the next day? Does he read a page and then make a summary for himself of what he read so that he can review that the next day to remember what happened? Something like that. Here's another scenario. So we have Rachel. Rachel is a brilliant 7th grade student who's left out of activities and never has her voice. And we think about writing activities here. I would think about this when I'm thinking about her and her support for writing. And what could we put in place so that her voice is heard? It could be her voice in the classroom, physically, her voice being part of the classroom. But I think about this idea of individuals who struggle with writing itself. And we talked about that before, this concept of not being able to share your voice through written expression. And what could we do for someone like Rachel to support her expression? I recently, well, it's not even recently anymore. It was actually last school year. Now that I think about it, well, it's still kind of recent. Last school year, worked with a student who was not participating in assignments because it was difficult for him to write, difficult to type, and he struggled. And so when I met with the teacher had said to me, well, he doesn't really do anything in my class. And I'm willing to be flexible and try some different things, but I don't even know if he knows what we're doing. I don't have any sense of his base of understanding of the content we're going over. So what could we do? And so we talked to him. Imagine that. We talked to him and asked him, said, I recognize you don't like writing. That is not a comfortable task for you. How could you do this? If you could do anything you wanted to show that you read the book and you understand the work, if you could do anything you wanted, what would you do? And this student said to me, this student was a 4th or 5th grader. I think he's a 5th grader, kind of that elementary age, kind of middle of that elementary. So, what would you do? He said, oh, you know what I would do? I do what I do now. I have a YouTube channel and I make videos of myself playing with friends, and I show cheat codes of how people can beat the game. And I said to him, well, that sounds really cool. How do you do that? What does that look like? He said, I write an outline so I know what I want to talk about. And then I talk about those different things. I don't write down all that stuff. I just talk about it and I record myself. And I said, that's it. Do that for your next assignment. Don't write anything. Do that and share the link to the video with myself and your teacher. And this is really one of those moments where the student says, well, am I allowed to do that? So there's this kind of compliance concern of is that going to be even possible? And in this case, it was nice to be able to say to him, yeah, it's possible. You can do that. Permission is granted. Do what you want. And what he came back with was a slide presentation with pictures from the book. It actually screenshotted pictures of the book. And then it was a talking picture of him, just like you're seeing my head now talking on the slide. It was his talking head. And he created a video that was almost 20 minutes long about this assignment, which was phenomenal. And it gave all the information that he would have needed to demonstrate his mastery. And so thinking about this idea of how we tap into, Raj points out, if Rachel's labeled as brilliant, how was that identified? Does she write well? In this case, we're going with the kind of assumption that she does not write well, but clearly speaks well and has a grasp of the things that she needs to do. And so it could be audio. It could be using speech to text If you're familiar with that from your phone or from your computer, or any dictation piece where you can dictate into your computer and have it write for you. That is incredibly powerful for some students, for any of us, to tell you the truth. So thinking about how we align our expectations for a demonstration of mastery with the skill set that a student has, that's critical. If every assignment a teacher gives is a write me one-page essay on this, and I don't write, I will never be able to show what I know in that class. If I can have some flexibility of how I do it, then I will be able to show what I know. I think that becomes really important when we think about technology. And it goes back to, I knew all these things would go back to that. It goes back to our consideration conversation. It's asking questions, identifying needs, looking at technology that's out there and matching those things. You know, anytime, and Naomi and I hear this from people a lot, because we're in technology, and people will say, well, I've tried that thing and it stunk. That thing stinks. And really what you're saying at that point is, you're not saying that thing stinks. Well, you are saying it, but really what you're saying is that thing was not right for me. And here's why. And as you describe why a thing wasn't right for you, what you're doing is identifying the features of a thing that will be right for you. So that's what we need to look at to match. All of assistive technology is a feature match process. I have these needs. This tool does these things. Does that work together? Great, then that's the right tool. If it doesn't, if it misses each other, that's not the right tool. That's not the tool's fault. Here I am, an apologist for tools all of a sudden. The tool doesn't stink. You could say the tool stinks for you. It's not the right tool for you, but it is still a good thing. It can do good things for other people that have different needs than you. And this whole idea of assistive tech, it is so special and so focused on that individual. That's what's interesting in education now. We have lots of tech in a classroom. Classrooms have tons of technology now. That technology tends to be put in a room in more of a universally designed approach to things, where it is, oh, let me put Chromebooks for everyone and we'll have digital instruction for everybody. Great, that sounds awesome. That's a universal support. Until someone in that room needs something else out of that digital instruction that tool might not provide them, that person suddenly needs assistive technology, because having technology might not be enough for them. They might need to customize it or add something to it to make it work for them. Yeah, and Naomi points out using the tool with strategies is a key. It's not just knowing how to use it, it's how to use it in different situations. It's when to use it, when is appropriate to use it. Just think about yourself. How many things do you have around you at any given time during the day? Technology tools. You know when to pick them up, to use them, to get the benefit of that support for you. That's the strategy piece of this with technology. And that sometimes gets lost on people, that whole idea of the strategy. Having tools is great. If I turned off my virtual background in my office, I wouldn't, because you don't want to see my office. You would see that I sit in a little technology nest of 5 computers, which my wife says is ridiculous. And I don't argue with that at times. It is ridiculous, but that's what I sit around with. Each of them doing a different thing for me right now. Well, actually 4 of them doing nothing for me right now, and just this one doing something. But this idea of understanding when it's appropriate to use a certain thing to perform a certain task for you, really important. So I see we're winding towards, we're past our 45-minute mark. I will throw this to the group, and I see Naomi answering questions in the chat. I saw questions popping up and I saw her answer them, so I thought that was good. Richard points out, what about the people who have an addiction to computers? I think that can be a very real thing. And I think with that, again, we go back to what is the task at hand? And is a computer the most appropriate way to resolve that task? Maybe it's not, maybe it is. Maybe we have to talk to that person about finding other paths to perform tasks that don't feed into the issue they might be having with technology in general. And so those are real things. Those are parts of conversations that we have with people a lot. We talk about screen time. If you read anything about computers and tablets and smartphones, people talk about screen time and reducing screen time. What we should be talking about is, what is productive screen time? And do we need to qualify screen time a little about that? And so thinking about that, what does that mean? When you say screens are bad, and when someone makes one of these generalizations, my first thought is, well, no, they're not all bad. Could some of them be bad? Sometimes I wish I didn't spend 6 hours of my day staring at my computer when I leave for the end of the day? Yeah, I do wish that some days. But I think when you're talking about that, you have to understand the tasks at hand and what people are really doing with that time. I think that's really important. Melanie came on to keep us on track now. I saw that. I like that. Melanie, you have questions or thoughts that people added that you wanted to jump in with?
I actually have someone that texts me a question. They're
Sure.
asking about if someone has a college textbook. Is there a way to have a college textbook converted to a digital book so that they can access some of these supports and services after grade school?
Yeah, that's a great question. So this whole idea of a print book being not very helpful for you, and what do we do at that point? First of all, my first suggestion would be, can you find that book through a digital text service available to you already? Something like Bookshare. We talked about Bookshare in our other event, but Bookshare is a repository of digital books. If you're an individual with a disability, you can access Bookshare for free. Now, Bookshare tends to be K-12 books, but I'm going to say that in a very broad sense because it's not always that case. Your book might live on Bookshare, and you could go there and look. And if you're a member of Bookshare as an individual with a print disability, you could download that book for free. And it's bookshare.org. Naomi just put in the chat. Another one is the Access Text Network. That is a Bookshare-like company or organization that also does college books. Richard points out the great point. These are the right questions. So is it not on Amazon as an electronic book? Is that not a possibility? Does it live on one of these services already? Can you reach out to a publisher and just say, I bought your book. I need it in a digital format. Do you have that? And can I get that? Naomi points out, if you're in college, reach out to the Disability Services Office and ask them. They will provide you support as well. Whether it is access to the book in another format that they might have, or they might help you change your book to the format you need. Because there are ways you can make a print book digital. You could sit there and you could scan it into a computer and then have a computer read to you. But I don't know if anybody on the call has ever scanned a book. I know Naomi has, because we have both done that. That is not a fun proposition for anybody, sitting and scanning a whole book. So ideally, you want to find it in a format that works for you. There are tools and apps that will allow you to take a picture of a page and read it. Something like, there's an app called Seeing AI, which will allow you to use your phone camera to simply snap a picture of a page and it will read it aloud to you. Those are great tools. Tools like that are great, but that is not a very functional way to navigate an entire book. I wouldn't wish that on you, to just scan every page with your phone and then listen to it. And so thinking about that, Naomi drops another idea in the chat. If you have a scanner and then another tool, she talks about Abby Fine Reader, which is another software tool that allows you to scan quickly. Richard goes again with another thought. Does it have to be digital text? Can it be an audiobook? Does it live as an audiobook somewhere? A lot of questions. These are the consideration questions that we think about. If print doesn't work for you, what does work for you? And then we explore those options as you go out there and see if those things will provide that level of support for you. It's a great question. It's such a real world example of a struggle the struggle is real with that case, right? Is that where it's a book and I can't read it. What do I do? So
And
there
I-
are some options.
And if I could, I think the difference is, right, under the school entitlement, right? Again, we have that word entitlement under
Yeah.
there. When someone graduates and goes to college, we expect accommodations and assistance, as Naomi suggested. Colleges have the specific offices. The one thing that I noticed, my daughter had recently graduated, but she was renting books from different services, right? Amazon, Chegg,
Yeah.
but a lot of them actually were offering cheaper too, was even better, were the digital formats of those books.
Yeah.
So that's something that this family could look into also, to see if
Yeah.
that would be of some assistance to them to then access some of the resources you were sharing earlier.
Yeah, I
in
think
your
it's such a great
presentation.
point. And I think what's also interesting is making sure that those formats you choose, it made me think of it when I realized we were talking about the Kindle also. If you get a Kindle book, making sure that Kindle book is able to be read aloud by software or by an app. That's not always the case. Amazon, if you haven't heard, is a company that wants to sell you something. So they don't want to give you access to something for free. They'd rather sell you an audio version of it. And so not all books have the capability to be read out loud with a computer or with a text-to-speech voice. So that's another concern you have to look at too. But great points, Melanie. Thank you for sharing that. That's awesome.
Mike, I do see, we do have a question. I'm not sure if Naomi got to it. So Naomi, if you did, I apologize. If you could share the slide that has a contact for you and Naomi for individuals who have some
Okay.
questions off topic of today's presentation.
Yes. Let me
I
find
think that's
it.
going to be helpful. And when you're looking for that, here you go. I'm going to just ask the person's question because they're on with us, and why not, right?
Yeah, why not?
Someone's looking for some equipment that can help someone who is hard of hearing within their home to hear the doorbell and the fire alarm. Any resources, or can that person contact you directly?
Well, that person can certainly contact us directly. And I think someone in the chat had mentioned a tool that's out there on your phone, on your iPhone, has an ability to recognize sounds and provide you with a visual representation for that, a flashing of your phone or something like that. So there's a lot of tools out there that detect some type of audio and give you a visual representation, a flashing light, something like a vibration, perhaps even. So there's a lot of tools out there. And yes, that person, please reach out to us. We can share bunches of examples with you of things that will do that for you. Yeah, there are plenty of things out there. A first step would be to look, if you have an iPhone, look in your phone and see if you can turn that on, because that could help.
And I know that
I believe the person in the chat mentioned the idea of that if an alarm went off in your house, your phone would hear that noise, that pitch of that noise, and then give you some kind of visual signal that that's happening.
I know that you've mentioned in the past, right, with is it the Nest and the Alexas, how there's so many additional devices that can connect to those also. So I think that, you know, if that person can reach out to you directly to get more specific suggestions, that would be great.
Yeah. And even now, I just thought of it. We put in a video doorbell, and the video doorbell, when someone pushes it, sends a visual cue to the Alexa screen we have in our kitchen, and it pops up and it says someone's at your front door, and it gives us that visual cue of that as well. So
Wonderful.
which was a little scary the first time it happened. I'm like, what's happening now? But we figured it out since.
That's great. So perfect. So I see that we are a little bit beyond our time. You know what? I do see a questions just popping in. Let's see.
Too.
Do you provide resources for an individual who communicate differently? And can
Yes.
someone reach out?
Miss
Perfect.
Pauline, yes. And it's one of those things, if we don't have the resources you need, we will connect you to an organization that does have the resources you need. But certainly reach out with questions, anything at all. Naomi and I are sitting here waiting to help. We are ready to go. We love talking technology. We love talking about these ideas with people. So yes, please reach out. We would be happy to chat with you.
Thanks again, Mike. Naomi, you're a rock star in the question.
Amazing in the
answer
chat,
and
right?
Section as always.
Oh my goodness,
Um,
amazing.
Yeah, and Mike, thank you so much. As always, the
course.
two of you, it's always a pleasure to work with. I know that we do have our next session coming up. I believe it's October 6th. So if you haven't already registered for that session, please feel free to do so. Look for our emails sharing that link. Within the next 24 to 48 hours, we are going to have a follow-up email go out regarding this session. We will attach today's handouts. We're going to attach a copy of the recording and also a copy of the summit that Mike spoke about through Disability Rights New Jersey, in case anyone's interested. That'll also have CLEPs, the Community Living Education contact, and Disability Rights New Jersey. It'll have Mike and Naomi's contacts on there also. As we're preparing to say goodbye today, you're going to see a brief survey pop up on your screen. Takes maybe 30 seconds. We encourage you to take that. It's the information that you provide us that really allows us to plan for future sessions to best address the community's needs. Thank you again for joining us, everyone. Please be well. Mike, Naomi, we'll see you in October.
Sounds good, Melanie. Thanks. Thanks, everybody. Have a great
Be
day.
well.